Hello people, it's Dodie, and today we're going to paint the baby. So, everybody's been asking me what I'm going to use. House paint. Pure and simple. Now, I got this at my local home store about 6 weeks ago because I knew I was going to do it. I had taken the doll to the store with me to color match what was on the doll. Now, you might be able to see let me see if I can't get this in a little closer. Little bits of oil starting to float. This is ordinary for oil-based paints. What you're going to have to do is make sure that that particular oil gets reincorporated. So, you get to shake it. Get the plastics out of it. But then go down and stir, because oil paint separates badly. That's normal. So go down to the bottom and stir some more. Now if it's fresh, like you went and got it this morning and you're going to paint this afternoon, you don't have to do all this. But for those of us that buy in bulk and then go back to do what we want to do, you got to do this. Paint stirs on a can this little. By the way, this is a sample can. You don't get a paint stir with it. I use a craft popsicle stick. And you see, it's thick. If you were going to be painting a wall, yeah, you would use it this thick. But we're going to be painting a baby. So, I'll be pouring out what I want. And capping off the color. I love this idea that it's actually got a screw cap. Back in the day, it was a paint can like you get acrylic house paint with. And back then, it was a pain. Clean up, because while it won't dry as fast as acrylics, it will dry and it will be permanent, except on plastics. But then again, we've already discussed that. So, once again, we've got thick paint, and we don't want it that thick on the doll. So, you have to thin it out a little bit in order for it to work well. Now, you can use a thinner. This used to be called turpentine, and you can still get turpentine, although it's difficult to find. It's also called terpenoid, but there's low odor thinners if you want to go that way. Frankly, mineral spirits. A little at a time till you get it to the consistency you want, just like working with acrylics. Now, why didn't I use acrylics? Well, we've already discussed that. Acrylics were invented in the late 40s, and the first patent for acrylic paint was taken out by Liquitex in 1951. So these dolls were painted with acrylic. Weren't painted with acrylics, they were painted with oil paints. Now, is there a difference between oil that you get from the hardware store and fine arts? Yes, there is, but you can safely mix them well together to get the effect you want. Fine art has more linseed oil in it, and the other has got more petroleum product. Otherwise, they're about the same. And you see it takes a lot of mixing. Now, I'm not going to be using an acrylic brush. What is an acrylic brush, and what's the difference between acrylic and oil brushes? Well, if you're going to be painting a house, there's not a whole heck of a lot of difference. They're both designed to hold the paint to get it onto the surface. But on a scale the size of our baby, I'm going to be using a camel hair brush. You see, it takes a lot of mixing. A camel hair brush is very soft. It picks up a lot of paint. The acrylic brush has got more body to it, and it will hold the plastic well, but it leaves brush marks if you're going to be using oil paints. So we're going to be using camel hair brushes. And there's our little arm. You see, it still holds after, but it drips better. Now, these dolls were spray painted. I'll leave a link in the description to a nice little British Pathé piece on how they were done. I really like it. But in the meantime, since we don't have a sprayer, we're going to paint it. And you see how well the paint covers. Now, what I'm doing right now, going back over it, is called dragging. It's to make sure that the coating is even. If you put it on too thick, you're going to lose your detail. Take your time. Like I said, oil paint does not dry quickly. And it will flow into spaces that you don't want to have them. Like, for instance, these little fingers. You need to keep going back and checking those. So what's flow? Flow is how the paint will move. You see people hanging up, and we're going to hang this doll up. The difference between oil is the drying time and acrylics. Now, you can get many coats on these dolls, but frankly, they weren't painted that heavily. They were sprayed and let dry, and that's the reason you get the loss of detail in the arms and hands. Artist paints can be, like I said, can be used, but that is horribly expensive. And let's face it, these dolls were mass produced and mass painted, so they would have this stuff by the gallon to put through an air gun. You don't especially have to work quickly, but you don't want to overpaint. Now you can see the flow where the brush marks are disappearing. This is what you want. This little arm is done, and we need to hang it up. Now, how you hang things up is your prerogative. What I ended up doing is just using one of my doll stands. You can hang it on a string. You can hang it off of something else, but this works well for me. Oh, sorry. I just put it on a doll stand and let it go. Part of the thing that you need to remember is to let it hang free. So that it can dry without extra marks, you see. Oops. Sorry. Let me get the light over there. You can see some brush marks. And you can see if you fool with it too much, you're going to end up messing it up. So let it alone. The temptation to make sure it's perfectly smooth is there, but you don't want to do that. You want to let gravity do its business. See how it starts to flow again to cover up what you just done. Alright. Now that we've got that out of the way and we've got the whole idea of what we're doing, let's paint the head and torso. Now you understand that putting paint on anything is going to alter the space. That's the reason we did the gesso, so that it would be even. Any type of coating is going to change the appearance of the doll. You can see here that we want to get the flow out of the doll's eyes because we want to keep that nice and crisp. And you can see how the camel hair pulls it off without leaving scratches like the acrylic does. Does it take longer to dry? You betcha. But you can get coverage and an evenness that you can't get with acrylics in just one coat like this one is. If this is your first time working with oil, what I would suggest is that you start off with just a piece of gessoed material and see how it works for you. Well, let's face it, practice makes perfect. And rather than practice on the doll that you so badly want to do right by, practice on gesso on a piece of material. You'll see what does and does not work, how fast it dries, how much it flows, and how thick you want to put it on. Now, if you want to invest in the if you want to invest in an air sprayer, you can, but I will warn you that it's rather expensive for a hobbyist. And you don't get the control that you do with a brush. What am I doing? Getting a piece of brush off of the paint. Yes, it will dry in, and yes, it will leave a mark. So better to pay attention and get it while it's semi-liquid. Usually 1 to 2 coats will take care of the evenness of the coverage. You don't need to do 6 to 10. Just 1 or 2 coats. This is a heavier paint than acrylics. And yes, you can sand oil paint. I don't see why you would, but yeah, you can sand it. So, short version takeaway is, yes, you can use house paint, because I guarantee your great-grandparents did. 2, you need to find a working consistency to do what you want to do. And 3, don't overbrush. Before you get ready to hang her up, make sure that all the flaws are out. Check her over really well. So that's another reason for the gesso, ladies. You can see where you missed the paint. Because that nice white finish will show up in a New York minute. And there we go. Obviously I cannot turn her over so you can see because she's wet as water. Don't try to drag your paint too thin because you'll end up with marks on the paint, and that's not what you want to do. And I'm ready to hang her up. How do you hang this? All right. I've got her in that blue coffee can. Totally suspended. You don't want anything to touch it until it dries. And that, ladies, is how we're going to do the first coat. We'll wait a couple of days, let it dry completely, and see if we need to go over it again. But pure and simple, that's how you do it. Now, y'all remember to do all the stuffs, and we'll talk to you the next time. Bye.